So you're about to invest in a township and you're wondering that should you actually invest in the township or should you not?
I mean, property investing, especially in townships, comes with so many opportunities. However, there are red flags whereby somebody should be looking out for before they actually start the investment.
Okay, so now the first point that I'd actually like to make is that with townships, this is one of the places whereby you would actually be getting the most returns on your money, right? What do I mean by that? You might find a property that has around 17 units to 19 units that is sold at 1.9 million. And whereas if that same property was actually put in a suburb, that would actually cost you a whole lot of money compared to what you had actually paid on that property. So now the problem with township investing becomes over-capitalizing. So what do we mean by over-capitalizing? Say for instance right now, you're purchasing a property and now this property is worth 1.7 million, it has 19 units, right? So with this 19 units, you plan on actually putting trees, palm trees. You plan on actually extending the property and putting more value into this property to find out that your property is now valued at 10 million. Here's where the problem becomes. When the next person actually comes to purchase that property and they are going to finance it via the bond, which most of us do, the problem will then be that the banks won't actually finance that particular property. So whenever you're going in towards a township to actually invest in, make sure that you understand that what is the cap in that area. So what's the highest price that you can actually put on that particular property, so that when you are doing your renovations, you take that into consideration that if I'm going to be actually improving this property, I can only push it up to the value of 5 million and not going up above 5 million. And this will vary from one township to the next.
I mean, I did really enjoy the first video that we did with Sister Lisa when we were speaking about township investing. Hence, we said, let's do the second edition. And then we're still looking at more factors that can contribute towards your success when it comes to investing in townships. I mean, when we're looking at the deposit situation, I know in some areas whereby if you are a landlord and then when it comes to the deposit situation, you can demand 2 months in advance. And then whereas in other areas, you can demand 1 month deposit. Whereas when you're looking at the township, there's a client of us who we were having a conversation with, and then she was like, guys, I'm into property investing in the townships. However, in the township that I'm actually located in, they do not demand deposit.
I remember when we needed to pay deposit, we did live in a back room. When we were actually moving in, they required half of that month's rental income.
Now the real question is that what is the situation? How do you react towards that as a landlord in terms of if your competitors, that market is not demanding rental, they're not demanding a deposit. So how do you position yourself in that? I mean, if you will be demanding 2 months, you've read this in a book whereby they say that it's good to do 2 months deposit, and then it makes sense when you're reading it. However, the practicality of that, let's really look at that. If you're in a township whereby they're saying that you do not need to actually put a deposit, now all of your competitors are not asking for a deposit, we need to understand the type of market that we're putting ourselves in. Number two, we need to understand the implications towards that. Because if you will still be demanding 2 months, I mean, just imagine that you're demanding 2 months and then nobody's really renting out your space. What does that have the impact towards that in terms of your property business? Because if it's already 2 months, they have already passed, now you're left with 10 months, that means you missed out on that other 10 months. So now the question will be, how do you position yourself in such a market? Now, other option is to say, okay, how about I take it to 1 month instead of 2 months? However, now the situation is still that nobody wants to pay deposit for a month, they just want to get in. So now the question will be then, okay, I understand that the market is not reacting towards these rules, so how do I position myself? Then I would be saying that, you know what, I'll be like my competitors and I would not be asking for a deposit. So what that means now is that you are exposed to the risks of if anything does go wrong, you will be liable to fix.
Of course.
If the tenant does leave before the month ends, that means it will be your baby in terms of finding the next client before it disturbs your business.
So now, tell me, right, when you're looking at investing in the township, right, say for instance, this is happening, right, whereby the whole community is now starting to add on their properties in terms of getting people to rent out in their backyards. So what negative consequences does that have in that particular area or for that particular community?
It's very important. I'll be looking at it from a property investor's perspective. as much as I can see a property that has 20 rooms, and then when it's pitched to me, they're saying that I'll be getting 50,000, and that makes investment sense. I really need to look at the sustainability of owning such a property. So what do I mean when I'm saying that? I mean, if you will be focusing on that alone and you're not focusing in terms of, will I be able to manage everything that's happening on that property? We come from a property that was very distressed, and I mean, it was that situation that, okay, the return on investment does make sense, but will I be able to handle this? So only to find out that everything is a mess. The electricity situation is a mess. The water situation is a mess. The plumbing system is a mess. And only to find out that as much as I will be getting a lot of money from the tenants, also my expenses will match that income. So that's where we're always speaking about numbers, that it's very important to understand my income versus expenses before I commit. So as much as it is a 22 room, what expenses does it come with it? As much as I'll be getting 50,000, what are my expenses that I should be looking out for before I even put a cent to it?
Of course. So now the point that I would actually like to bring in, right, is that whenever you're actually building a property without actually inquiring at the municipal, the thing that you are basically doing is that you're saying that you're putting more stress onto the infrastructure that's already built. So what do I mean by this? Say for instance right now, the community in X, right, was given 1,000 voltage to sustain all houses. Now, if you are adding on properties onto your property, this means that there's going to be more consumption that's actually going on in that particular area. So now, if everybody decides to do that, and now we are powering up our things, especially in winter, it gets powered up to a point whereby now we need 2,000 voltage in that particular area. Now it becomes a problem for us to say that how do we now sustain everybody with this 1,000 that was already built in this particular area. So hence we're saying that whenever you're going to be actually building something on top of the infrastructure that you have, you need to go consult the municipality and get an approved plan. So what does an approved plan mean? It means that the municipal is aware of what you're actually doing in that particular property, so that if anything does happen or you are trying to actually sell this property, it's easy for you to actually finance it or get it financed by the next person, because now already the municipal is aware of this, and this is one of the requirements that the bank actually want, that does this property have an approved plan? If not, chances are the banks won't actually finance that particular property. And now when you're looking at your township, right, most of the times we have just one room whereby you do everything in that one room. You bath, you sleep, you stay, everything happens in that particular one room. Now when you're looking at other funding schemes, you find that they will only give money to properties whereby it's sort of an apartment. So it has its own designated kitchen, it has its own designated bathroom and bedroom. In that way, you would actually get funding as opposed to a property that just has a room only.
There you go. Viewings. You know, viewings are very important. A lot of people take that for granted. So there was a property that we went to go view, and it's very important that you ask specific questions. And you need to take note, number one, of how they're being answered, the tone they're being answered, and what feedback are you getting from that. Because that feedback alone can be a red flag, so that you can actually put yourself away from that. So what am I saying by saying this? Is that we went to go view a property, and then there's a specific question that we asked. So I'm going to be linking that with today's topic of Township Invest. So we asked about the approval of plans. So it had about 14 units, and they told us that we can collect something like 50,000 from it. And I was like, wow, this sounds good.
And when we called the estate agent, they said that they do have the approved plans.
Yeah. So so there were two estate agents working on this. So this is another thing that you can do, is that you can ask the different estate agents specific questions so that you can see, are there any inconsistencies? And once you find an inconsistency, you should be very aware of what is going on. So then the question was then, is there any approved plans on this property? And then the previous estate agent said that there are approved plans. And then the estate agent that we went to go view with, he said that the owner is working on that. So what does that mean for me as a property investor? Is it really true that the owner is working on that? Because I truly believe that if the owner did have that, that would be on the table. However, now because there were not any approved plans, This means that whatever that's happening, if I am to actually buy or put an offer to purchase, now this is my problem. So especially we need to understand something, especially when it comes to moving from residential to commercial or rezoning as a whole. It takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of money. So if I did buy this property without any approved plans and now only I want to rezone, I need to understand the financial implications towards that, so that I can actually take a decision, because we're always speaking about total investment. We're always speaking about return on investment. So if I am going to be taking out money from converting this house into a commercial, or I want to rezone, I need to understand then the total investment that I would have put in, and how does that affect me as a property investor.
Now, if you've watched this far, I'm going to give you my top 3 things that you need to look out for before investing in a property in a township, right? Number 1 needs to be an approved plan. Ask for the approved plan. Number 2, it has to be that what is the value of the property and what is the ceiling of this property. If you're planning on saying that, you know what, I want to increase the value of the property, we need to know that what is the price that we can't actually increase it above, right? That's the second one. The third one has to be that know your return on investment on the property before you actually purchase that property.
Yeah.
Now, your 3.
My top 3 is the electricity and water situation. So who is responsible for paying for that, especially if it's not prepaid? Number 2, I'd like to get a rates and taxes bill for the past 3 months so that I can understand fully what are my expenses. Then number 3, it goes back to what Lebo said. Property investing is a numbers game. I need to understand all my expenses and all my income so that I can take a decision, not based on 40 units, not based on it looking beautiful. However, looking at it in terms of scalability, can I buy my next property using this property?
So, if you are in Durban or around Durban, or know of somebody that's in Durban and interested in property investing, make sure that you do send them the link to our next event.
We will be at the Royal Durban Country Club on the 30th of July 2022. If you are in Durban, make sure that you do buy your ticket, because trust me, it's going to be explosive when it comes to the information that will be put out there. We're not leaving anything on the table. Like, trust me, property investors in Durban, this one is for you. You cannot afford to miss out on this one.
And if you enjoyed this video, make sure that you leave a comment and also leave a like. This really helps us in our growth. So if you want to see us grow, man, make sure that you do leave a comment and like, and then we'll make sure that we release content every week.
On the 1st of October, Lebo, do you want to hit a bomb, or
let's leave that for next week's video. Nongol,
invest like a pro?
cheers.